Right, let's get to the FA Cup then. Manchester City recovered from their Champions League disappointment, didn't they, to book their place in the final, beating Chelsea 1-0. Bernardo Silva scoring the only goal of the semi-final. And that was a bit of redemption, wasn't it, after he missed his penalty, and that played a big part in the shootout defeats to Real Madrid. City remain on course for another Premier League and FA Cup double, but after the game, Guardiola hit out at scheduling. He felt, Sam, it was one of the greatest things he's seen from a group of players, given the recovery time that they had since the disappointment of Real Madrid and kind of getting their heads right. I think that's what he was trying to allude to, the fact that it's not just about the physicalities, it's about resetting your brains. He said that the current football calendar is unsustainable. Do you agree with that? Kind of who dictates this schedule, and is he right in some way?
Well, I certainly agree with his wider point about unsustainable. I think there's two threads here. I think he's got a point on the they could have had it 24 hours later. I think most managers would be upset about that. He broadened it out though to a much wider point, which he started to mention UEFA and the FIFA Club World Cup. So just as a sort of summary, the Champions League gets bigger next season. So this is going to be a big change, that we're going to have 8 group stage games plus a playoff round between the group stages and the knockout starting. The group stage will go into to January. So we're used to it being finished by Christmas. And just to loop in another issue, those FA Cup replays that we've lost, that's because of those Champions League games, those 2 extra group stage Champions League games. Next summer is the FIFA Club World Cup, which is a 32-team tournament over June and July. Manchester City will be in it. He mentioned that as well. So yes, the calendar is expanding. Why is it expanding? Because there's basically a war between UEFA and FIFA for the broadcast wealth of the game. So they want the biggest clubs to play in their competitions, which then gives them the control of what broadcasters will pay to televise these matches. And what's happened is there's just more and more matches. So I think the general estimate is that the players will get 3 weeks off in the summer. The mid-season player break, which we know about in January, where they split one match day round over 2 weekends, so half the clubs are off for 1 week, then the next week the other half the clubs are off. That's going. FA Cup replays gone. And of course the Premier League and the FA and the EFL get the blame for these things, but really this is being dictated on a global level, and it's being dictated by UEFA and FIFA, who are, as we've said, in this battle to create the big competitions. And I'm afraid they are doing it with the club's connivance. So the clubs seem to be happy, the biggest clubs seem to be happy with these bigger competitions because it's more games, which means more money from the broadcasters. So it's this kind of circle of blame that's going round. Guardiola was specific in one sense. He said to the BBC, why could we not play this game on Sunday? OK, I understand that. But if you look on the grand scale, why is the global game, the elite players playing more and more games? It is being driven by the clubs. I'm not just talking about Manchester City, I'm talking about big clubs right across Europe, what we call the leading members of the European Club Association. They are the ones driving this change. It wouldn't happen unless they were asking for it. I'm not sure broadcasters are queuing up to say, we really want to televise a Club World Cup. There's 32 teams. We've never had anything like that before, really. So I always think when the managers say this, I certainly sympathise with them, but I think they need to have hard conversations with their own clubs about the exponential growth of the game and where this is going and what effect that might have on footballers' well-being, but also on the quality of the games that we're watching, because there's no doubt about it, the standard has dipped, and we expect a lot from these young lads. We expect top performances week in, week out, and we're very critical of them when they don't deliver that. But we also have to understand that for the 100 years of professional football, no one has played more games than these boys. Of course, no one's ever been paid more money to play those games, but they're still human beings, and the physical toll is pretty steep.
Talking to another manager as well, about what happens in the summer break. The summer break doesn't really work for a lot of them either, because they're going on these epic journeys to, cover sponsors and where they want them to play and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like they're being tugged in all directions. In terms of the game itself, let's go back to that then, because Chelsea are going to rue their chances, aren't they, in this one? Because they really did have opportunity after opportunity to get the better of City in that game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Sam made some really good points about the context of it, which is important, because it wasn't that City played badly. It was that they were playing 66 hours after playing in a very attritional Champions League quarter-final.
Yes.
That took a lot of emotional as well as physical mentality, effort from the players. So I think as far as this competition was concerned, this contest was concerned, it was a really good opportunity for Chelsea to take their chances. And actually, they did so well to create those chances. I'm going to go with your paper, and you can talk us through it, and you can do the work. It's a Telegraph's coverage, but I don't just want to show your match report, Sam, across the bottom. Look at the headline, usual suspects keep tired City on course of the double. I want to show you this bit up on the top, referee's view. That's Keith Hackett, and he is saying that he should have at least been sent, Michael Oliver, the referee, should have been sent to the monitor. He says, in his view, Jack Grealish's actions were deliberate. This is Keith's view, and that because he made his body shape bigger. The problem is that it's what I said to you last week, Vicky. VAR is basically replacing one level of subjectivity with another. So you have Michael Oliver and David Coote, who was a VAR, saying, no, he didn't try to make his body shape bigger. And you've got an ex-referee saying, actually, he did.
But it's not subjective to the fact that it came off his hand and went out, and it should have been a corner. That's
absolutely
not subjective.
Keith says that as well, and the question remains: why was there not a corner? Yeah. And that's what nobody watching the game could understand. And you know, you've got a couple of officials in front of a monitor, just like us, seeing the same things, just like us. So it's inconceivable that they could have missed it.
I think, look, I mean, David Coote can't tell Oliver to go back and give the corner. So that, and Michael Oliver's the top referee. He's just, it's just something that hasn't been spotted there. He's just on the wrong angle. Keith's a colleague of mine. He doesn't often agree with the referee, I have to say. So I think he won't mind me saying. But yeah, that was the whole notion of body shape, and we're looking at Jack Grealish there. The whole notion of body shape and where your arm is and what's the natural position is a really, really difficult call to make. And I think in this instance, really, I think they've probably taken the easier option.
Yeah.
Okay. I think just in general terms, I mean, what we say on the show, Sam, it becomes a bit unfair and a bit tiresome to just keep hammering officials all the time. So we're not about hammering the officials, but if everyone watching the game has an identical level of incredulity that the ball has gone out for a corner and that corner is not awarded, then it's legitimate to ask, well, why was that not the case? And as you say, which is quite important, that VAR only adjudicates on whether it's a penalty or not, but doesn't allow to be able to say, well, actually, you should have let the ball go out. You should have ruled that they should have had a corner.
Begs the question. Anyway, right, OK. Let's go on to Cole Palmer, the one that got away or wanted away twice, according to Pep. I know all the talk has been largely about the fact that, you know, what have they missed, what are City missing in terms of Cole Palmer? Would there be a moment, do you think, though, for Cole Palmer yesterday, sort of watching what City did and thinking, gosh, should I have stayed?
Well, I don't pretend to know his mind. There was a very good piece by James Ducker in the Telegraph about his upbringing, where he came from in Wythenshawe, and his immersion in his father's Sunday League team. It was a wonderful kind of story of how you create football. He's actually a Manchester United fan. He doesn't try and hide that. Clearly, Manchester City's academy is a prodigious producer and honer of raw talent. And it is also a very useful revenue income, because they have done a remarkable job of generating PSR compliant cash by selling academy players. And one of the things I like about PSR is it means you just can't keep every player. You have to make difficult decisions, and I'm sure Cole Palmer was a very difficult decision to let him go, because they will know better than anyone what a talent he is. But that is the game of strategy that all these teams are obliged to play under PSR, that you cannot stockpile players, that sometimes you have to let go of the ones that you actually really quite like. And Chelsea are facing that this summer as well, let's not forget. So yes, I think there are probably times this season where they would like to have been able to call upon him, but the good thing is he has become a star at another team.
He certainly has. I mean, he feels like he's dragging them up on his own at the moment. There was a tweet somebody wrote yesterday, forgive me because I can't remember what they said, but they, in terms of their names, but it said, if only we had Cole Palmer to pass to Cole Palmer to score. It's like, that's exactly what it felt like. You know, he was the only one on that pitch that was going to do anything. For Mauricio Pochettino, that's now 3 FA Cup semi-finals he's lost, 2 with Tottenham and then obviously this one yesterday. A lot of sympathy for him, though, at the moment, because this is a raw team that he's having to do a lot with.
Listen, I'm a broken record on this, but I've said many times the best person for these players is Mauricio Pochettino. Yeah. I've got to point you in the direction of a terrific piece by Jacob Steinberg in The Observer today, who talks all about the fact that if the owners are watching and they see the progress that Chelsea have made, given how shambolic they were up until, about a month ago, when they played Manchester United and they contrived to lose a game they should have won in the dying minutes. They must be pleased with the progress the team is making, even allowing for the finishing of Nicholas Jackson. I remember before I joined national newspapers, the great Brian Woolnough, who wrote for The Sun, and he assessed a very raw Nicolas Anelka, who at the time was a teenager in his first season at Arsenal. And, I remember the frustrations we all had at the time at the fact that his finishing was very raw, very similar to Nicholas Jackson. But the following season, we were all celebrating Anelka because he scored the goals to help Arsenal to win the double. And that's how quickly it changes. And I think Nicholas Jackson will have that composure over time, and he's got the right manager to keep faith in him. I covered Spurs when Pochettino put his faith in young players. Like Harry Winks, for example, who didn't get a look in after he left, but started him against Real Madrid and had the confidence. Do you remember we did the Mondays, didn't we? And we asked Pochettino, "Are you going to start with him?" And he said, "Yeah, at the Bernabeu." And you're up against some stellar talents there. But Pochettino is a guy who says, "No, I don't care." Why are we so excited with the likes of Amorim potentially coming to the Premier League? Because he's a guy who puts his faith in young players and says to owners, "Keep your money. I love this player. I'm going to turn him into a superstar." I think Pochettino will do that with this squad.
He'd do well to persuade the Chelsea owners to keep their money in their pocket. I mean, that's the one thing they don't tend to do.
No, they don't. I do want to reflect on what happened midweek, because obviously the great game against Everton, 6-0 in the end, and then we're all talking about the argument that went on. Pochettino had already spoken about the fact that he has got a team that is lacking maturity, shall we say, and what we witnessed was a really immature debacle in front of all the cameras with Madueke Jackson and then Cole Palmer involved as well. What did you make of it? And incidentally, Madueke was also seen kind of laughing with Grealish at the end of the game yesterday as well, after losing in an FA Cup semi-final.
Well, to take the final point, I think we have to remember they are very young men, and these cameras are on them all the time, and they sometimes forget. And they do know all these. A lot of these guys, they know each other from junior international football, and I think that he's obviously just made a mistake, Madueke. I don't think he deserves to be pilloried for it.
No.
He's just a young bloke, and has probably got another. Well, he's got another game in 3 days' time. So it's not really. I don't think we should give it the significance that some. Obviously, a lot of supporters get very upset about these things, but I think we can pass on that. And on the other point, I mean, Jackson clearly wanted that penalty because he's just struggling for goals, and he wants that confidence and he wants that little boost, and he shouldn't have done it. I mean, Cole Palmer's the best penalty taker in the league now. I think now that Harry Kane's in the Bundesliga, and the last thing your penalty taker needs is to have to fight his teammates before he's got to stick it past the goalkeeper. So it was a mistake. And it's not the first time it's happened at Chelsea this season.
No.
But I think that is a little bit of the kind of. Chelsea feel like a club a little bit without a hierarchy, because so many players have come and gone. I mean, no one would have tried to take the ball off Frank Lampard because there was a very established hierarchy. But because they've cleared out so many footballers, and even the captain, Conor Gallagher, who's had a good season, is constantly suggested that he will leave as well because they need to sell him.
Yeah.
So there's this strange sort of. Lack of a core leadership, or that leadership has been undermined somewhat, and I think these things happen as a consequence of that.
What are the papers making Chelsea?
I'm going to show you one. We've already done the Telegraph, so let me show you this. It's in the Mail on Sunday. Sammy Mockbell, terrific chief. What's his title now, Sam?
Chief News Gatherer. I don't know. Gatherer's wrong, but
highly respected.
Chief
Sammy
Football.
Mockbell.
Yes.
But this is a terrific analysis of Nicholas Jackson yesterday. And I like his intro. I'm going to read you a little bit of the intro. He says, no wonder Nicholas Jackson was so desperate to take a penalty against Everton last Monday, because if this is the way that he finishes in open play, then he needs all the help he can get. Now, you would be forgiven for thinking that this is a takedown of Jackson, but actually he's sympathetic to Jackson. And he says, very similar to what I've been saying to you, the raw materials are there. He just needs moulding. He's 22 years old. Time is on his side. And I really do think so. I'll give you a bit of context with this one. 10 goals so far this season for Nicholas Jackson, the same number in the first season that Didier Drogba scored for Chelsea.
Wow, OK. That puts it in perspective.
Yeah,
doesn't
people forget Drogba had the jury was still out on him after the first season, but even though they'd won the title in 04-05, but he became one of the greats. He certainly did.